Hello everyone, I'm Eric Hux of Hux Racing, and this is actually the third video in our MR2 wiring series. In this video I'm going to show you how to modify a 02 to 04 RSX Type S engine harness for use in a K-swapped MR2. This would be the same work you would use for, say, an SW20 or an AW11. This is the harness before anything is done to it. Typically there's another piece of plastic, like a loom support piece that says here it usually supports the boot. Somebody's already popped it off, but if yours has that, you'll recognize it. But this is what the harness looks like before we have done any work to it. So let's get started. Let's lay this thing out. Try to keep all this in the visible window. First start by, let's go ahead and get this boot out of our way. As I say in the other vids, just try not to cut deep and don't cut the wires below. Alright, boot out of the way. Now, pop all these plastic pieces off of the harness. I say all of them. Pop off the ones that I show you. We're not going to remove the plastic loom around the coils or the injector harness section. Some guys will remove both of those because they'll have a fancy coil pack and run an aftermarket intake that has the injectors leads run differently. But in this harness, I'm going to leave both of those sections on it. Comes the good part. Because we're routing the harness from a different side, approaching the engine from a different side than the SW20, we're going to end up removing all of this loom section here and just re-looming it with some split loom. You've seen in my other vids, I just annihilate these things as I go through them. This piece right here can be a booger. I find it's easy just to twist it and pop it off of there just like that. And we'll toss that piece out as well as all of those. All right. Come back to here. Off. I wouldn't recommend removing this gray wrapped piece. It is the stickiest, gummiest, worst wrap ever. So if you don't have to remove this, do not, unless you have lots of brake cleaner, some acetone, or some means of removing all that gum, but it makes a sticky, nasty harness mess underneath. So I typically don't remove that gray wrap. And it's a piece that's already going to be inside the cabin in the SW20, so you're not going to have to worry about it, you know, seeing it in the engine bay anyway. cut it down the existing split loom. You can see how just dry rotted this stuff already is. A lot of it's just falling apart. Alright. And whoever had this, actually I take that back. I was going to say they removed some previous loom, but they didn't. It's exactly as it would have been stock. Okay, so get that large plastic piece off, that piece of split loom. Let's go ahead and get all of this off here. And you'll see why shortly, because tucking the alternator cable, nesting it amongst all these other wires makes for a smaller bundle than trying to lay that alternator cable on top of all of this. Sometimes it unwraps, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. I like to go ahead and split this little junction piece off right here. And remove this wrap here. You can use this as a landmark. You can see I'm unwrapping this back to that power and ground junction block. I will split these. I like to split this down the side, but not remove all the wrapping. I'll show you. So I like to split those open, and then I'll just clean off some of this extra. Okay. There we go. Now, you can see what I've got here. So I've removed that large plastic piece that was here, the loom all the way back to the ECU connectors minus that gray silver wrap. Now at this point we're going to tie in the alternator cable section that we had done in the previous video. Now, say the K-series charge harness. As I said, at this point this piece is plug and play. To make this harness lay nicer, I'm going to tuck this under these wires that lay over the top. Let that run towards the ECU connectors. And you'll see the reason I did that is because these wires lay over the top. This piece will nest in here and make a lot smaller bundle if it wasn't being pinned up or held up by these wires that are laying over the top. Put that out of there. So that's why I ran that under there. But this down. This charge harness section, plug and play, right to the Type S engine harness. This is the junction where your starter lead would run off of. I'm back. It looks like this. This guy didn't send me this piece, so I went and grabbed this from another guy's harness. But that's actually the extension that runs off of the Type S harness to your starter solenoid. The base harness will have the a connector like this that comes off the harness itself, whereas the Type S has a separate lead. Okay, so there's our charge harness section. We'll lay the alternator cable. All this stuff's going to be hidden underneath the intake manifold, so I don't bother like re-looming this piece all the way up into here. I'll just run the charge cable back to this point. Get our handy electrical tape. Move this back here to visible window. So pull that alternator cable. Go ahead, wrap that in there. And you can see that since I've unloomed all that other, it's easier to make a nice tight bundle by shoving the alternator cable down inside that junction. Same here, try to get all these wires to come out on one side. Makes it a lot easier for the split loom to pass it. And then I'll typically tape up this whole middle section. I'm gonna get it all bundled tight, and then I'll come back and wrap it. There we go. I know I'm repeating it, but you can see how much tighter it bundles since I removed the factory's tape around the harness. Last one. There we go. On the way back to there. Come back here. Get this middle section, this middle junction all taped up clean. Just one thing to be sure of, I see this happen occasionally, but now that we're approaching the, typically like in a Civic, the harness approaches the engine from the back side, so where the driver would be up forward to the engine. In an MR2, we're going the opposite way. We're, in the Civic, it would be like we were coming from the radiator. So a guy will approach the engine from the different side and all of a sudden get his cam sensors flip-flopped and have an engine that sounds like it's got a big cam. So just be sure of your cam sensor positions when you are cam sensor connector positions when you go to put the harness back in the car. We'll rewrap this section here where we split it down the middle. This section clean looking. And wrap it beyond where the split loom will end. Like that. So that junction is now clean. Okay. All the all the dirty parts done, because you still have to handle a dirty harness if your harness is as dirty as most of the ones that get sent to me. Get some, let's see, that will be three-quarter split loom on this section. And I will run that split loom all the way to here. And here's a little trick to make this go together easier. Cut yourself a little V right there where it passes that one section. And then the split loom will still come together tightly. We will You can wrap the whole thing if you prefer. Sometimes if it seems like the bundle is kind of tight, I will, but this one, it's the wires in it aren't bulging the split loom. There's the 3/4 split loom portion. Let that section out. And 1-inch split loom. Bring it about to where the gray ends is about as far as I usually run it. This might have gone almost as quick as the charge harness video. Now to get the size of this down a little bit, where this is all together, I'll sometimes just pinch the split loom down a bit, allow it to taper where it comes to a close. Take this back for a little bit. Like that. And then a series of these down the harness. Actually, don't like how that came out. I probably won't edit that out. I'll let you watch that. So it looked like I was pinching the loom again at the end. So we'll just let it come down a little bit in size. But you can see how it doesn't make it as a clean a bundle when you just lay the alternator cable on top of a bundle of wires like that. But let's go back in and try to do this without pinching this. There we go, a lot better. All right, just like that, that part there would go on a junction block near the ECU, and then the alternator cable would continue to run to the front half of the car, the way we power an SW20. AW11 is actually more like a Civic. You can put the alternator cable straight to the battery, but in an SW20, the alternator cable must be divorced from the battery cable. It must run to the front fuse box section. So that is the completion of the RSX Type S or base engine harness for use in an MR2 Kswap with the charge harness integrated. The charge harness prep was in a separate video, so please go check that out. And there we go, one clean converted harness. Thank you.